I mean, I did stuff.
Hey, where's that bird? Who's taking that bird? Do you want to get
Yes, he did. It's amazing, man.
Thanks, everybody. My name is Judy Ritter. I'm the mayor of Vista. I want to welcome you tonight to our Rancho Buena Vista Adobe. And the Vista Chamber of Commerce is pleased to be hosting their 9th annual meet and greet, or not meet the leaders tonight. Hello, Judy. We are the leaders, right? All of us are the leaders. So at this time, now that you have all your chairs, I have you sitting, I want you to rise and join me with a Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Studies, so we're about halfway there, but it's a step in the right direction. Finally, on the delivering on the promises that you voters voted on in 2004. You said, hey, the Sandag came to you and said, hey, if you'll give us a half cent of your sales tax, we'll promise you all these roads. Well, they delivered on some, but they definitely didn't deliver on the 78 or the 52 or the 67. And we got monies for those roads last Friday, and it was a great sigh of relief, and it was a great thing to, I think, to do. But it was also balanced with transit. We're not anti-transit. I'm not anti-transit. I'm one of the few board members that actually takes transit to Sandag meetings. I live part-time now between Oceanside and San Marcos, and I take the train down the coaster to get to some of the Sandag meetings. But so it was a balanced plan moving forward. It has transit in the more denser areas of San Diego, and then highways out in the here in the 78 and the 52 and the 67. So that was a woo moment for us at Sandag. Other things happening, CCEs are happening now here lately. Community Choice Energy, or CCE, CCAs. The county just passed 3-2 to move forward with Community Choice Energy. I was one of the 2. I didn't think we were ready for it yet, but it's coming. So I know we're going to be linking up, hopefully joining with a few other North County cities, possibly with the county, in buying energy, cleaner energy for you to use and purchase, and you can have a choice of whether you want to use, I don't know, leaded, unleaded, or premium, apparently, on the energy, different levels there. So the CCEs have been happening. Those are on topics of the day. And then recently with Tri-City Hospital, we had the county and Tri-City Hospital joined arms and had a success. Thank you. We had Stephen back here, yes, for the Tri-City Hospital. Tri-City Hospital Supervisor Gaspar and I had many meetings with Tri-City Hospital, with Aaron and with Steve, and came to a conclusion of the county needs to step up a little bit here in the ways of helping hospitals reach their behavioral health goals. Unfortunately, Tri-City had to suspend some of their behavioral health beds, but we're going to get those back open again. And so that was it was a lot of work, a lot of late meetings, a lot of. I was talking to Dietland, I think, on Sunday nights, Sunday mornings, and all different times of the day trying to get that done. But I've only been on the board for 9 months. It's a lot different on the Board of Supervisors than it was being mayor. Mayor was a lot easier. This supervisor job's a full-time job, and I got a great staff. Crystal Jabbar is here tonight. If you can't get a hold of me, get a hold of Crystal. And I'll leave you with this: is one of the things. If you have any issues or you have questions or on different things, call my office. Call me. I've always had people even when I was mayor, people would say, I really don't want to bug you with this, or I don't want to I don't want to tell you about this pothole. But I said, well, call my office. Let us know. I got a great staff of people. I got 9 people. We're clicking. We're working together really hard. And so don't hesitate to call. I'll be happy to help anytime. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm enjoying being your county supervisor, and I'll work my tail off for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Desmond. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. So I'd like you all to just enjoy your dinner. We'll be back in just a few moments, and we'll get started with our next speaker. But enjoy your dinner. Thank you.
Tonight, it's a great opportunity to get together. Before I introduce Senator Pat Bates, I just wanted to say a few words about some things that are going on in Tri-City. So our mission at Tri-City Medical Center is to advance the health and wellness of the communities we serve. We serve the cities of Carlsbad, Oceanside, and Vista. And we've been doing that since 1961. We have a number of really amazing programs that are going on at Tri-City right now. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of those. We are improving flow through the emergency department right now. So we opened up an area called Team Triage. We've expanded our capacity in another area near the emergency department to take patients who may have, let's say, less emergent issues through the process much quicker and open up capacity for people who have emergencies to get through the hospital. We also have added an In Quicker app onto our website. And so you can actually, if you have a non-emergent issue but you can't get into an urgent care, you can actually go on our website and click on and make an appointment to come to the emergency room, and they get you through much quicker, hence the name, In Quicker. So we've been doing that, doing a lot of work with a genius, right? I know, it's like Fast Pass, right? Exactly. One of the other things that we've been doing is really ramping up our stroke program. We were one of the first stroke receiving centers around, and we've widely been recognized for our treatment rates with thrombectomies. That's taking out thrombosis or clots out of the brain. And so our hospital a couple years ago was ranked 3rd in the country at the rate of doing those things. And we recently achieved through the Joint Commission our accreditation to become a thrombectomy center. And so that really shows you that we're one of 36 hospitals in the country that has that designation. And so if you are going to have a stroke, you or a family member have a stroke, this is the place to be. Because you have a much greater opportunity of survival. Also wanted to talk about our heart care. We have top-notch heart attack care. We are a STEMI receiving center. That stands for ST, elevated myocardial infarction. It's a certain type of heart attack. And so we are very quick at getting people into our cath lab and opening up their artery, because time is muscle, time is life, really. And so we're doing an amazing job there. And we recently were honored with a number of the American Heart Association awards for those efforts. And then the last thing, and I think this is really important, is our community connections. And so our community engagement programs are really important to us. We align our activities with the needs of the community as identified by the Hospital Association. 2 of our partner organizations are here tonight, at least 2. New Haven is one of them. Operation Hope, another program, just amazing programs. And so we are in the community with them. We're supporting them financially with some of their programs, and we're actually sticking our staff members at their facilities to help out with programs for the people that they serve, and we're really proud of that. We're very proud also to be represented by some amazing elected officials. I get the opportunity to introduce one now, and actually one a little bit later. But the one I'm going to introduce tonight is Senator Pat Bates. And I've known Pat for quite some time because I used to actually work for the state Senate and knew Pat in her former role. And so Pat has been representing the 38th district, and if I could just get my notes here, it's also rather dark up here. Rachel was right. So Senator Pat Bates represents South Orange County and North San Diego County in the California State Senate. She grew up in Long Beach and began her professional career as a Los Angeles County social worker. She was the driving force behind Laguna Niguel's campaign for cityhood and became its first mayor upon its city's incorporation in 1989. She served 4 terms as mayor of that city. She's married to John, and they have 2 adult children and 4 grandchildren, so that keeps her pretty busy when she's not at the state capitol. Voters elected her to the California State Assembly in 1998, and the Orange County Board of Supervisors in 2006, and then the California State Senate in 2014. It's my pleasure to introduce Pat Bates. Don't lean on the podium, Pat. There you go.
Thank you, Aaron. Well, Aaron managed to out me as a career politician, so I didn't know that you're going to have that same old resume. I got to change it, because I might be going for another office. I keep saying I'm going to be the Betty White of politics and be going till I'm in my 90s. Maybe my family says, well, maybe we don't like to have you around since you haven't been around for the last 20 years. So anyway. But they are great. They have been, my family has been absolutely incredible over the years, because you know how it is in politics, Jim. Mike, you're learning, I think. There's great days, and then there's days that you can't even want to talk about. we are looked upon as those politicians. What do John and Ken call us? Those hacks, I think. So anyway, we've managed, and they've managed along with me, and it's been an incredible honor and a pleasure, frankly, to be able to have served this district for the number of years that I have. And I never actually expected to be a career politician or policymaker, and I'll share this real quick story with you. When I was elected to the Assembly, I walked onto the Assembly floor, and the assistant chief secretary of the Assembly looked out, and he was leaning over that big podium, and he said, "Oh my God, Pat, how did you get here?" Now, the reason he said that is that his name's Larry, and Larry and I shared geometry in the 10th grade together, and we sat in the back of the room, and when the teacher would look back at us, we do this because we were so shy, never wanted to speak, please don't call on me. So I had been very involved in traffic issues, Jim, in my city, fighting for roads and sidewalks, all those things mothers worry about. And I got the name of, "Oh, here comes that housewife with a calculator," because we used to stand out there and count cars, and go up and torture the Board of Supervisors to give us more traffic signals and sidewalks. And they would say, "Oh, here come those housewives with calculators." So I said to Larry, "You never underestimate a housewife with a calculator. That's why I'm here, fighting for the causes." And I have done that, certainly, and it's been my joy for many, many years. I certainly am happy to be back in the district. I think we all are. We're doing an interim break. Our session ended September 13th in the Senate. We ended on Saturday morning at 3. Tasha, I'm not sure when the Assembly got out, but by that time I don't think anybody knew what they were doing, but kept voting anyway. I certainly appreciate all the work that you do as a chamber for the city of Vista, and certainly what you all do for our region. Without your support, without your indulgence in some of the things, the ups and downs, I don't think we would have the quality of life that we all enjoy here. Certainly in the 36th Senate District, Orange County, and San Diego, we're blended that way. And I see Judy out there. I knew Judy way back when I first was in the Assembly. What a great mayor, absolutely incredible. It's great to share the podium today with, it's a bipartisan, certainly with my colleagues from the other side of the aisle, from Congress and certainly from the Assembly. And I think you all know that bipartisan work is probably the most important thing we can do as we face the challenges that we all have here on our planet, certainly in our state and our nation. So it's certainly my joy to work with you guys, and I'll be quickly focusing on some of the things that we have been able to do together in the legislature. Very busy year this year. Actually the busiest in the last 6 years. We had 2,576 bills were introduced, 1,799 in the Assembly. They do have more members. It's not that they're just looking for things to do. They just have more members to introduce ideas. 777 in the Senate. The governor has signed 508 bills as of today. He has vetoed 23 bills for a percentage of 4.4%, and I think that's kind of low in terms of previous governors. There's still 506 bills left that must be signed, and they have to be signed by Sunday, October 13th. If not, they automatically become law. So I still have 2. I don't know what you have, Tasha, but I'm hoping he forgets mine and they get to be law before he takes a look at them. But 2 of those remaining bills that I have, SB 541, it's been sponsored by the Orange County Sheriff's Department. It will require the Department of Education to develop a uniform program for conducting age and grade appropriate school lockdown drills to ensure that the highest safety measures that we can have on our campuses so they can be deployed if there is a terrorist or an active shooter threat on our campuses. Age appropriate was a big issue with regards to this kind of bill, because there's a concern that when we don't have a uniform program that it could be done differently at each school, and in some cases a few have been done and traumatized the younger kids. So we put it into basically with the Department of Education to come up with something uniform and to have folks involved in determining what the program would provide who are very aware of the behavior issues that we have to be concerned about. I also have SB 5889, and you don't have to remember those numbers because my staff always has to remind me the bill numbers. I just remember the subject. And this one would prohibit an operator of addiction treatment facilities from providing any form of false advertising or deceptive marketing of services that they're providing. I'd like to call this bill the Brandon Nelson bill because this false marketing happened in the case of Brandon Nelson. He was a young man who had a psychotic break. He needed substance abuse treatment, and his parents were lured into a facility that promised to give him, it was a residential treatment facility, promised him an array of services, including medication to control his psychotic issues. Unfortunately, none of those were delivered to Brandon in this facility, and he did commit suicide in one of the psychotic moments of breaks that he had. So if this bill is approved and the governor signs that, the Department of Healthcare Services will now have the authority to suspend and revoke licenses and impose significant financial penalties on the residential treatment facilities that are found to be in violation. And as you know, our communities have been surrounded with sober living home and residential treatment facility abuses. They've plagued our local communities for the last several years. So I am pleased to report, in addition to my bill, there were a number of bills that came through the legislature this year that will look to enforce licensing and certainly oversee the operation in these facilities. Hopefully, some of those made it to the governor's desk and are still before him, and Tasha's nodding, so that's good news. There was a bipartisan sober living home legislative working group initiated this year by Orange County Assemblywoman Cotty Petra Norris. She's from Laguna Beach in Orange County. Both Tasha and I joined, and the fact that we've come together in this bipartisan coalition, it has really brought the critical need for more legislative regulation and of the industry itself into a brighter focus. We have been trying for the last 20 years to do something about the abuses that have happened in the addiction industry, and it's been, unfortunately, a very frustrating failure. More work is needed at the federal level. Are you listening, Mike? Or are you eating? I'm challenging you here with regards to the sober living homes. Local governments really need some regulatory authority so that they can oversee and certainly impose certain restrictions in our communities with regards to these particular kinds of facilities. They're supposed to be group homes where the protected class reside. Therefore, under the Americans with Disability Act, local government can't have any regulation over them. But I'm suggesting that under the definition of a group home, there should be a subset that speaks directly to, if you're in there for substance abuse treatment and healing, if you will, then there has to be some local government that's making sure that that's what's going on, because we know that in many of them that hasn't been. Also, Republicans and Democrats in the legislature did join together to pass the Wildland Fire Recovery Bill that was to address the claims of wildfire victims over the last 2 years. 2017, 2018 was the devastating fires. This bill creates an insurance fund. It requires $10.5 billion investment from the investor-owned utilities and another $10.5 billion to be matched by our ratepayers. And I don't want you to all go, it's not a tax, guys. What it is, there's a fee. If you look on your bills, there's a $2.50 kind of a range of fee that was placed on there during the energy crisis of 2001. That was supposed to expire in 2020. It's going to be continued to 2035, and that will generate our share of that insurance fund, $10.5 billion. Finally, we'll get about $40 billion in that insurance fund, and that will help address present and future liabilities of the investor-owned utilities and also those who lost their homes. And unfortunately, without the legislation, the major bond rating agencies were threatening to downgrade the investor-owned utilities, which would have had a significant impact on us as ratepayers. Right now, it's $2.50, period. If they were to downgrade us, they were talking about $3 to $12 fee for every $100 of your utility bill. So I thought, well, $250 is a heck of a lot better than, you know, $12 on a $300 utility bill. That's $36 every month addition. So I did vote for it with Democrats and Republicans. I think some on either side, Democrats and Republicans, some were not convinced, but those of us who were convinced that this was a better road for our ratepayers did vote for it, and it did pass, and the governor is implementing it. With regard to the homeless problem, we've been working in a very bipartisan fashion. $2.5 billion has been allocated, appropriated through this year's budget negotiations. This will go for programs for short and supportive long-term shelters and housing for the chronically homeless. The dollars will be available to our local governments through competitive grants. About $650 million is a set aside for counties and cities that are going to participate. And also another $100 million has been added to increase the number of mental health professionals available to work in facilities. And I think that will be something very beneficial to the county and Tri-City, your new arrangement. And because I know one of the issues was, are there mental health professionals available and who are on call able to come? So we're hoping that that's going to encourage people to seek those degrees and those who have them to be able to use them. Another bipartisan issue includes San Onofre songs, and I'm going to leave that to Mike. I'm sure you're going to talk about that. But know that Tasha and I have supported a Senate it's a joint resolution that will go to the Assembly for approval too. However, it's not up for review until January because it came in late. But it does urge Congress and then the President to sign your prioritization bill, and I'm sure you'll talk a little more about that. While we had a lot of bipartisan work, we also had controversies that had a partisan edge to them. Certainly the independent contractor bill, and I think you might have all heard about AB 5 and the infamous Dynamex decision with the ABC test. And the ABC test requires an independent contractor to meet that test before he can or she can continue as an independent contractor. Must be free from the control and direction of the hiring entity in connection with the performance of their work. Number two, the worker performs work that's outside the usual course of the hiring entity's business. And three, the worker is customarily engaged in an independently established trade, occupation, business of the same nature as the work they perform. It codifies Dynamex and the ABC test into law, and there are some exceptions that were granted through some very vigorous lobbying of representatives, a number of groups, and I won't list all those, but generally doctors, lawyers, architects, engineers, travel agents, real estate agents, generally they were the first up. There's about 23 exceptions. Those who did not get an exemption include rideshare, delivery services, Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, and Postmates. And I think the most problematic one, frankly, are franchisees. So our fast food industry that is basically based on franchises, those individuals who bought a Subway, bought a McDonald's, you name it, they are now considered, through this test, they would be considered the employees of the corporation. So you can see there's still some big issues with this. It certainly will come back to the legislature in particular because Uber and Lyft are threatening a lawsuit because they've been left out based on the Equal Protection Clause and concurrently promising a ballot initiative campaign beginning, and they've, I guess, cobbled together $90 million to qualify it for the ballot. So you would hope that that kind of money isn't spent, that we get some bipartisan, round table going so we can work out the kinks in this bill to ensure that people who do work as independent contractors also have the benefits that were a subject of the Dynamex decision to begin with. So we're hoping that will happen, but I know it will be back for discussion. The other hotly debated issue was the rent control bill. And you probably know about that one. AB 1482 imposes rent control statewide. Rent increases statewide are allowed up to 5% plus inflation for the next decade, but single-family residential rentals are not included, they're exempted. There is another rent control measure coming to the 2020 ballot. It will mirror Prop 10 that was defeated significantly, pretty close to 70%, certainly in this district. And the one that's being proposed is pretty much like Prop 10. So I assume, I'm always a positive thinker, guys, that this will come back for some discussion. Maybe the rent control bill has a little broader reach into rent control increases, but is a little less demanding in terms of what a property owner has to do to be able to evict somebody from their property if they want to do any sort of improvements to the property, which may be actually required by the Americans with Disability Act. So there's some places that we can go on that one. We have to, I think, have an open mind, those who are working on it, so that we don't have another ballot fight. The cost of Prop 10 was $179 million was spent on defeating that measure. And when you think about the problems that we have with homeless and all the things that occur right here in our front yards, in our communities that need our transportation, all these things that need that kind of money, isn't there a better way to solve some of these kind of problems? So we hope that that kind of reason will prevail. In closing, I didn't do 1.5 minutes, Jim, but I think I got through it more than 20 minutes, which they told me. My staff said we have a 20-minute speech. I said, you've got to be kidding, you know. Anyway, it's been great to be here. I'm going to keep working as I have for the quality of life in our communities. And I do want you all to give a shout out to Supervisor Desmond and Supervisor Gaspar. They did two things that in the state legislature are not possible, to come up with a compromise where everybody walked away from the table not getting everything they wanted, but they got a lot. And that was with Tri-City Hospital and the county and their new plan, and certainly Sandag and the use of transportation dollars for roads and improving mobility. So congratulations. Those are the good old days on the Board of Supervisors. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Senator Bates, for joining us this evening and for your remarks. You know, it's really great to hear highlights of bipartisanship and working together, and I have a feeling we're going to hear some more about that this evening as we continue. And at this time, I would like to invite Katie Scanlon from SDG&E to join me. And Senator Bates, I think you grabbed my notes. That's it. Thank you. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Katie Scanlon. I'm with San Diego Gas and Electric, and we're pleased to sponsor the event tonight. Thank you so much to Rachel and everyone at the Vista Chamber for all their work in putting this on. I mean, it's a really beautiful venue, and hearing the ties to the history, I think, really makes it a meaningful event for us all. So, here at San Diego Gas and Electric, we're really privileged to serve the Vista community of around 100,000 customers, and we provide safe electric and gas service to you every day. One of our top priorities right now is continuing to focus on the area of clean transportation and really innovating programs and initiatives that can continue to foster growth in this area. And I'm pleased to introduce our next speaker, who has shown her commitment in this space as well, and really continuing to bring clean transportation opportunities to our community here and her district that she serves. So I'm going to read some remarks about her bio. Tasha Berner Horvath was elected to the California State Assembly in November 2018. She represents the 76th district, which encompasses Camp Pendleton, Oceanside, Vista, woo! Carlsbad and Encinitas. Tasha's part of the leadership team in the Assembly, serving as Majority Whip. She also sits on the following committees: Communications and Conveyance, Local Government, Aging and Long-Term Care, Veterans Affairs, and she's also the Joint Legislative Audit. Also serves on the Joint Legislative Audit Committee, helping ensure responsible and responsive governance throughout California. Before serving in the state assembly, Tasha and I actually had a conversation about this. A stop sign really launched her political career. So 4 years ago, she really embarked on this journey. And she initially started serving as a council member in Encinitas. She's a businesswoman and a former PTA leader, and she's also a third-generation North County resident. So please help me give a warm welcome to our Assembly Member, Tasha Onofre.
Thank you, everyone. It's such an honor to be here. Are we enjoying our dinner? It's delicious. Thank you so much for the caterers, for the food, and this wonderful environment. It's an honor to be here and serve you in the Assembly. Thank you to Senator Bates. I think, highlighting how much bipartisan work we do in Sacramento is really important, because I think often you hear about the controversies, the differences. But we know, as Pat was a mom trying to, improve the safety of her roads. I got my start as a PTA mom trying to improve the safety of our roads. We know there's so much more we have in common that we have different. And I think one of the important things as we approach 2020, and we're going to hear a lot of the controversies and the differences. But the thing that we can all do as leaders in Vista and our larger community is keep in mind what we have that is similar. And what we want to do is we want to keep our community safe. We want to have an environment where people have clean air and clean water to drink. We want to make sure that the kids have the opportunity for the future to make sure that they have access to education, that they're not growing up homeless, that they have a roof over their head and they have something on the table to eat. And we want to make sure that there's equality and equity in the communities that has made the American dream what it is. And so when I talk about my legislative package in this last year, it's been an honor to focus on 3 buckets, which are sustainability, opportunity, and equality and equity. And that's how I set up my legislative package. I think I look at our district, and we are a very strong environmental district. We had a plastics bill, didn't end up getting off the assembly floor when it came back for concurrence. But it required packaging plastics to have 30% recycled content. Because we know what's going on right now is that we no longer can send our plastic recycling to China. And let's be frank, it wasn't getting recycled anyways. So why should we send something to China and create jobs in China rather than create jobs here in California for Californians? So that bill was really interesting because I talked about it at a local elected leader event. And a very conservative, he described himself as the most conservative Republican I would ever meet. And he came up to me, he's like, I'm on the water board, and I'm the most conservative Republican you'll ever meet, Tasha, and I am so happy you talked about that bill. Because we have to do something about our landfills, and we have to do something about our recycling, and we have to do something about the plastics that are polluting our oceans. Because we know we're an environmental district. Even here in Vista, you're 10 minutes away from the ocean. We are so lucky. I go up to Sacramento, it was like, who thought to put the capital of the state of California in a place that's 110 degrees in the summer? They didn't have air conditioning back then. So we're very fortunate to live here, and we're very fortunate that we have trails and parks and open space. And those are all things that are really important to me. So if you look at my legislative package on the sustainability side, we have a bill that preserves the MOU and the environmental protection of San Onofre State Park. That's really important because, it's Camp Pendleton actually. We call it San Onofre State Park. It's actually Camp Pendleton. They do maneuvers. They can't be shutting down like arterial roads through Camp Pendleton to do maneuvers. That's like not a realistic thing. So let's just do the right thing, protect that. That got held in Assembly Approps. We're bringing it back in January, and we are very confident that it will move forward, and we're very excited to see that move forward. We also had a bill, much less of an issue in Vista, but definitely an issue in the coastal part of my district, is we have very unsafe railroad crossings. We have in Leucadia, just 3 blocks from my house, we have what's called Suicide Alley. We have 1 to 3 deaths a month in that rail corridor. And we could do something. We can help cities make good decisions by making sure the state is offering the resources they need to lower the cost of making sure we have these plans to have safe at-grade pedestrian crossings. So that bill was signed by the governor, my first bill, and I think it's important that it's an active transportation environmental bill that first got signed. So I was very happy when that got signed. And then we have another bill, which is basically, I want to see like electric vehicle fast charging stations in every single park and ride in the state. That's my goal. And hopefully if I can serve 10 years in the Assembly, we will see in every single park and ride in the state electric vehicle fast charging stations. Because if we want to really, really move the needle, not do like small little things that are adjusting here and there, we're going to move the needle. We're going to have to make sure we are converting to electric vehicles. There are other ones. I know Mike drives a hydrogen car. Do you still drive that still?
We have an electric car and a hydrogen car.
Look at him. So, you know, we do have to expand. You know, Nancy Skinner is a big fan of expanding the hydrogen network. I prefer the electric vehicle fast charging network. And, you know, one of the things we're going to be working on in this next year is combining that with art spaces to activate park and rides. So SDG&E will be having conversations about that. So we have that bill. And we have another bill that looks at how do we incentivize and plan for our clean energy future. So we have a bill that we're going to be moving forward on that. So these are all the things we're doing to make sure that we're protecting our environment. And we all know there was a tragedy that happened in Encinitas on August 2nd. And the day before yesterday, I had to give memorial resolutions to a man who lost his wife, his daughter, and his sister-in-law, and because of a tragic bluff failure. So we have worked with the Scripps Institute of Oceanography, and we'll be proposing this, and hopefully this will be a bipartisan piece of legislation we can all do to keep our beaches safe. Is we need sand, obviously. Mike, you're the sand guy. I'm just not sure that he ever thought that was going to be his moniker, but you know, we're looking to you for that. But we can do an early warning system on our bluffs that detects early movements before there's a collapse, because people need 5 seconds to run to the ocean to protect themselves so that never happens again. And as you know, Beacon's Beach, or you may not know, is an active landslide area. And if that slides, we won't recover from the loss of those children in our family, in our community. So we're committed to that. So there's so much work we can do on the environment, making sure we're keeping our oceans and our beaches clean, because we know that it doesn't only drive our quality of life, but it drives our economy in this region. So the second bucket is opportunity, really important. And we passed bills that were really important, which was, you know, with the Water Authority, making sure that veterans, when they come out of Pendleton, have a fast track for certification to go work with our Water Authority. Really important bill. We know we love all of our people who work in water in San Diego County, and we know we're a leader in the state in terms of storage and water. But our workforce is aging, and we need to make sure we're replacing them at a greater rate. And so we passed that bill, and that got signed by the governor. The other thing on the opportunity side is making sure that our small businesses are taken care of. And this is something, as a former small business owner, I started a company in the 90s, I also have a company now. We can do more in the state of California with the amount of budget we have to serve our small businesses. And so my bill 1607 was the third bill signed by the governor, and that is, it's a Gender Tax Repeal Act notification. It's a long way of saying, we're gonna let people know what the rules are so people can play by the rules, and they're not surprised by very, very large fines, that you don't get a warning letter. If you actually accidentally charge 2 different prices based just on gender and no other parameter, you get an automatic $1,000 to $4,000 fine, no warning. So we have a bill that will give every single business owner, when they get a new license or they renew their license, a notification. We've done it in 5 languages. Ended up being like a great idea that ended up even getting better in every committee. That doesn't always happen, that a bill gets better in every committee, right, Pat? So we have that bill. Well, the other thing is access to education. In our budget, we increased the number of UC and CSU slots. So that's really important to make sure we're creating the workforce of the future. We also worked with our veterans, and we have housing. And I would like to take a slightly different approach. We don't call it rent control, because that's not what we passed. We passed tenant protections. I like to call it the Prop 13 for renters. And it wasn't a perfect bill, but most bills in Sacramento are not perfect. And so we'll be running 2 bills to improve what was passed with 1482 next year. One was looking at how do we opt out the individual owners of 1 to 10 units from the bill. And the second one is making sure that we tweak the substantial renovation component of 1482 so that it's easier to comply with it, to make sure we're keeping it. But we know when we keep our seniors in their homes and they're not on the streets, we're doing right by our people. We're doing right by our communities. Because we know once people are on the street and they're homeless and they don't have a roof over their head, getting them back into housing is substantially more investment of taxpayer money than making sure they don't become homeless in the first place. And so that brings me to the third bucket, which is equality and equity, which I think is really important. We know here in Vista, we have a high homeless population. And we have a high number of children who are at risk of homelessness. And we know those kids are not getting an opportunity to learn. Because if you're living in a house where you're stacked up 3 families in a 3-bedroom apartment, and maybe that's not on any of us at our tables or our neighbors, but we know those kids when they have to lock themselves in the bathroom for 30 minutes to do their homework, because that's the only place they have peace and quiet, they're not getting a fair shot at life. So I co-authored AB 16 with Luz Rivas, who's a assembly member from LA, East San Fernando Valley. She doesn't like it when I say LA. LA's very big. They have a lot of members. And this bill would double the amount of resources from the State Department of Education to school districts to help make sure the school districts are providing the most amount of resources they can to coordinate between the county, the state, the cities, so those kids have a better shot at the future. Because we know our investment now matters more than helping them when they're already addicted to drugs, when they're already in the criminal justice system, and when they're already failing at getting a job and they're homeless. So I think there's a lot we can do, and there's a lot we can do about equity in California. And you know, that is an issue in Vista, and I think it's really, you know, guys, anybody who's talked to me knows me, I'm really direct. That's an issue that we need to really address with an open heart and a clear sense of presence and mind. So the last thing we did was equality, and it's the bill I probably am most proud of, is AB 467. Wrote it together with Corey Schumacher. It's the first improvement in Title IX in 40 years. It requires male and female athletes on state lands to have equal compensation prizes, because it's 2019, people. We should not be paying women less than men for essentially the same work that they're doing in state competitions. So we're very proud of that. The governor signed it. The first partner, it was a very big priority bill of her and the status of the Commission on Women and Girls to make sure that we're seeing the gender equality we know that drives innovation and leadership in the state of California. It makes us the 5th largest economy. And you know, the more we can do to make sure women's leadership is trained up and moving forward is great. And so my other bill is AB 931. That's on the governor's desk, like Pat. Maybe he'll just have so many bills that he'll just slip through. And that would increase the representation of women on local commissions and boards in cities over 50,000. We know that diversity matters. We know that diverse boards make better decisions. And we know that local boards and commissions are a great place for women to get the experience and the leadership that makes a difference in their communities. And I think if you look at Pat and I, you can see we were moms that wanted to make a difference. And I got my start on a local commission. I was a planning commissioner in Encinitas. I was the only woman when I got appointed. I replaced a man, so it was an all-male board. I was replaced by a woman. That woman got elected to council, and now it's an all-male planning commission. And you know, they're all smart guys, they're wonderful. But we know that diversity and perspective, and especially in my opinion, the perspective that a mother brings to our local boards and commissions is really important. So that's AB 931. We're hoping the governor signs it. It was a very strongly supported bill from like all the female groups, the National Organization for Women, National Women's Political Caucus, and so it's a very important thing. And you know, I always, you know, I'm gonna go back to the opening that Katie was so kind to give me. I got my start as a mom trying to get a stop sign 4 years ago. I had never any intention for running for office or anything. I just wanted our kids to be safe and be able to walk and bike to school like I did as a kid. And I always warn people, well, be careful with those stop signs, because you may end up in the state assembly as well. So I want to thank you for your time. You know, we got a number of budget asks in, we've got a number of things for our district for the state budget, which is the first time an assembly member has been able to do this in anybody's recent memory. So we got $8 million for the beachfront improvement project in Oceanside. That includes a police substation. And I know, you know, the Oceanside Pier and that area is a really important regional tourist destination for us, so we're very proud of that. We got $1.5 million for the Maricosta Veterans Transition Center, which is really important to make sure those veterans coming out of Pendleton, which they often will end up at Maricosta, are being given those services they need to succeed, because anybody who served our country deserves us to serve them back, in my opinion. And then the third one was we got $1 million for homelessness for our district. We did get a lot of money in the budget to our counties, but we know when we look at those county allocations that we often don't get our fair share up here in the northwest quadrant of San Diego County. So that's $250,000 for each of the cities in cooperation with the Community Resource Center. Community Resource Center has reduced homelessness in cities by 25% in 1 year, with 20% of those are veterans. They have capacity and reach in every city of this district, and they will work in cooperation, and they're very good at being collaborative with other organizations like the Vista Community Clinic to make sure that we're really helping our neighbors in need, and we're helping getting those who we can help off the street. Because it's for the first time we're seeing, when you look at what are people concerned about in the state, for the first time homelessness is at the top of that list in double-digit numbers. That hasn't been the case before. And I think when we all look around, we see the tragedy of homelessness, and it's very complex. If it was an easy thing, we would have all solved homelessness by now. And it's not easy. There's addiction issues, there's mental health issues, there's, for the first time we're seeing families, 2-parent working families with 2 kids homeless because they can't afford rent. And their kids are here, their family's here. We have to do better by our people. And so that's what I'm really committed to. And I think as we project forward, because this is the first year of a 2-year session, as we project forward into next year, one of the things the governor wants that didn't get this year was building 3.5 million new housing units by 2025. 3.5 million. So we did not pass SB 50. That would not have worked in my district, and I've spoken with the author many times about what the problems with that bill is. This would basically do automatic 4 to 6-story apartments near any transit stop. So that takes away local control. It does add those units, but it's not appropriate with the amount of transit that we know we still need to build in North County. We know that transit is less than ideal and not as functional as it needs to be to really reach our state's mandated greenhouse gas reduction targets by 2035 and 2040. So when we look at these things, we know that's coming down the line. So with whatever you're doing and whatever space you're in, if you have ideas on how do we build those units and still have local control, that is the answer that everybody's looking for. And I'd be happy to work in a bipartisan fashion to work on that. My name is Tasha Berner-Horvath. Thank you for letting me be your assembly member. It's so great to work with you. And then I think I'm passing this back to Rachel. Is that what I'm doing? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Assembly Member Berner-Horvath. It was great to hear from you this evening. Thank you for your passionate remarks. And so nice to meet our leaders. So thank you for that. At this time, I actually just want to make a quick comment. We've heard a few kudos tonight about the agreement that was reached between the county and Tri-City Medical Center to get those mental health facility going. And I just wanted to mention also that Mayor Ritter and Mayor Jones from San Marcos definitely helped to advocate for that deal, and just want to say thank you so much for our community. We need those beds, and it's great to see that moving forward. So with that, I would like to invite at this time Aaron Bizak from Tri-City Medical Center to come up and introduce our final speaker of the evening.
Well, thank you again. I really appreciate it. Since Congressman Mike Levin was elected, he's had an open door policy with us. And it's been an amazing opportunity. He and his staff have been willing to listen when it comes to policy issues at the federal level. And I just want to thank Mike and his team, Kyle and whatnot, for coming out to the hospital, for touring the hospital, and for really opening the door to us and allowing us to partner on a variety of things. So I want to just tell you I appreciate that. So Congressman Mike Levin represents California's 49th Congressional District, which very much like Pat is South Orange County and North San Diego County. He, as a member of Congress, some of his top priorities are combating climate change, capitalizing on the economic benefits of a sustainable energy future, and providing solutions to move hazardous nuclear waste at the San Onofre Nuclear Generating Station, which has obviously been touched on already. It's a very important issue. He and I have something in common, both grandsons of World War II veterans. and he represents the Marine Corps base, Camp Pendleton, and so he advocates for active duty service members and veterans who have sacrificed for our freedom. I think that's something that all of us really agree upon a lot, particularly coming from this area. He recently had 2 bills to support veterans signed into law, which is not a small feat in the federal government nowadays. And so please give a warm welcome to Congressman Michael Levin.
Thank you very much, everybody. It's great to be with you. Great to be back in the district after another boring and uneventful week in Washington. Nothing going on in Washington, right? But one thing that I want you to go home with tonight when you go and you speak to your coworkers and friends and family members is that the Washington that you see on cable news, I don't care which of the networks, isn't really reflective of what we do on a day-to-day basis. I'm not on the Intelligence Committee or the Judiciary Committee or the Oversight Committee. And the work that we do in Washington really is focused on the committees that we've been appointed to. And in my case, I got 3 great committees, and I'll briefly tell you about them and the work that we do in those committees. The first is the House Veterans Affairs Committee. And I actually was appointed to chair a subcommittee, which is very rare as a freshman, to get to chair anything as a freshman. To get to do anything of influence as a freshman is very hard in Washington, but I had the great honor to get to have a gavel for veterans' economic opportunity with jurisdiction over veterans' housing, homelessness, the GI Bill, transition assistance, workforce development, and the like. And I have done everything possible to try to use that subcommittee for the greater good. What I love about the House Veterans Affairs Committee is that you don't know who the Republicans are, you don't know who the Democrats are. We're all there in service of our veterans to give back in any way we can to those who have given so much for our freedom. And I'm honored to tell you that in the 9 months that I've been in Congress, I have introduced, along with a different Republican for each bill, 8 different bipartisan veterans bills, of which 6 have passed through the House of Representatives. 6 bipartisan bills, that's the most of any freshman member of Congress, and something that I'm very proud of. Of those 6, as you alluded to, 2 have become law, and they are significant bills. The first will open up the Forever GI Bill to far more veterans who are interested in science, technology, engineering, and math. The second will make it easier for veterans to refinance their VA home loans. So these are significant bills. We've got a whole lot more to do, but I'm encouraged, and it's a reminder that despite the fact that if you only watch those cable news shows that I mentioned before, and I try to tell my parents, only watch 1 hour of cable news a day, because any more than that will drive you absolutely nuts. But if you only watch the cable news, you miss that. And you don't see all the good that is still happening. There's also good happening on the other 2 committees that I serve on. The Select Committee on the Climate Crisis. I'm really honored to be one of the 3 Californians, one of the 3 freshmen on that committee. And we're honored in this district to have some of the best scientists and the best researchers in the world when it comes to climate and energy. Who here has heard of the Keeling Curve? Does anybody know what that is? There's like a couple of you, that's good. So in 1958, Keeling at UC San Diego measured the amount of carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere. The measurement was 315 parts per million. In the succeeding years, scientists believe that 350 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere is the rate at which bad things start to happen to our environment and subsequently to our economy and our way of life. Today, when we measured recently, does anybody know what the measurement was? Anybody? Anybody? 415 parts per million. Significantly higher than 350. And it is widely believed, it's not even a matter of belief. You believe in things that may or may not be true. There's overwhelming scientific acceptance of the fact that we have to reduce that number. I believe that if we're smart about it, we can reduce that number in a way that grows our economy at the same time. If we invest in the clean energy technology of the future, just as we've invested in life sciences and biotechnology and telecommunications, this region can be one of the great clean energy regions in the world. And I am convinced that when we look at 20, 30 years from now, all of the new things that we're going to be doing, new electric vehicles and infrastructure for those vehicles, new ways to build buildings, new types of building materials, new ways to move goods around, and new ways to generate electricity, and new ways to do sustainable agriculture. There's going to be a whole group of new companies, new entrepreneurs, and I believe it's the greatest wealth creation opportunity of our lifetimes. The question is whether we have the foresight to invest in the research, the development, and the deployment of those technologies here, or whether we're going to be using technologies that are invented and developed and manufactured elsewhere. I don't know about you, but I want to lead in this industrial revolution just the way we've led in biotechnology, just the way we've led in life sciences, just the way we've led in telecommunications. And if anybody tells you that you cannot protect the environment and grow the economy at the same time, do not believe them. Because in California, for decades, in a bipartisan manner, we have worked together to protect our environment, and we have grown our economy at the same time. And we can do the same at the federal level if only we have the vision to do it. Another bipartisan effort with regard to our environment, I sit on the House Natural Resources Committee and the Water and Oceans Subcommittee, is coastal protection. Let me take a survey. I do this everywhere that I go. I've done 205 house parties, 9 town halls, 24 community coffees. And I always ask this question, and many times I can. Who here would like to see drilling rigs off our California coastline? Anyone? There's one. No? Off. You don't want it, right? Does anybody want it? No. So in all those meetings, I found 2 people total that want to see it. And you say, well, why are you asking about this? Well, I had a meeting with Secretary David Bernhardt, the Secretary of Interior, one-on-one in my office, and I asked him, will you respect the overwhelming will of Californians and prevent offshore drilling in California? And he looked at me and he said, Congressman, I will follow the law, which told me we've got a problem. This administration, unfortunately, does want to see offshore drilling. They want to see it in California. They want to see it in South Carolina. They want to see it in Florida. This is not a partisan thing. This is very much, if you live in a community like ours and you've saved and you've worked hard so that you can live in a place like this, you don't want to see drilling off our coast. So I'm proud that I co-sponsored and have helped lead 2 bipartisan bills in the House of Representatives, one to ban drilling in the Pacific, one to ban drilling in the Atlantic. We've sent those bills to Senate Majority Leader McConnell, and we are demanding that Rick Scott, if you remember, Rick Scott was the governor of Florida. Remember how he got an exemption for the state of Florida so they wouldn't drill there? We're saying Senator Scott, now Senator Rick Scott, do the same. Prevent drilling off the coast of Florida and California. I think working together, we can get it done. And we've got to work really, really hard because unfortunately, 5 decades of bipartisan progress on the environment is on the line. In 1967, Governor Ronald Reagan signed into law in California a bill that created the California Air Resources Board. Who here grew up in Southern California? A lot of you. A lot of you. Remember the smog alerts that we used to have? I remember them extremely well, growing up in South Orange County. And what did we do? We passed very restrictive standards on tailpipe emissions. And we did it starting in the late 60s with the creation of CARB. A few years after, the federal government, on a bipartisan basis, with Richard Nixon as president, created the Clean Air Act and specifically exempted the state of California because of our unique challenges with regard to smog. You know, we made a lot of progress. I have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, my wife and I, and we're very fortunate that we live by Dana Point Harbor, and we drive down that hill on the way when I take them to school, and I'll point down to Catalina and say, you see that out there? What is it? They say Catalina. Well, I couldn't see that when I was their age. I didn't even know there was an island out there. You look back to the hills, the Saddleback Mountains. I didn't even know there were mountains back there. We've made bold and aggressive steps over the last 5 decades through 6 different administrations, Republicans and Democrats alike. And we've always had the ability to set our own emission standards until about 3 weeks ago, when the administration under Andrew Wheeler at the EPA said, no longer can California do this. And no one wants this other than the administration and the oil companies, unfortunately. If there are any oil company executives in the House, I'm sorry. Not even the car companies want this. I have spoken personally to the CEO of one of these 4 companies that cut this deal with California. They do not want to go backwards. So we've got to stand up for our environment as never before. And that gets me to San Onofre. So in the middle of our beautiful district, Senator Bates, we have 1,600 tons of highly radioactive spent nuclear fuel. As an environmental attorney dealing with issues like this for the past 10 years, I felt that I was uniquely equipped to try to handle it, and we've gone in with everything we have. We put together a group of experts, scientific experts, policy experts, chaired by the former head of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and a retired Navy admiral who was the Navy mayor of San Diego. They have informed a number of policy decisions that we've made and things that we've even gone and tried to get into law so far. 2 of those things deal with San Onofre specifically and the unique challenges that we face. But before I get to those, you have to know that we have a bigger problem. The problem is we lack a comprehensive nuclear waste strategy in the United States, period. And until we solve that problem, we're going to have issues at San Onofre, because we can come up with all the rules we want about how we move that waste, but unless there's somewhere to send it, we're going to have a really tough time. So a little history. You go back to 1987, when Congress, in its infinite wisdom, decided that Yucca Mountain in Nevada was the only place where we would have a permanent nuclear waste repository in the United States. We then spent the 90s and 2000s, and we invested $16 billion of your money on Yucca Mountain in Nevada. I just went there with my friend Scott Peters. It is an engineering marvel. 5 miles of tunnels, 1,000 feet below sea level, ready to take 110,000 tons of nuclear waste, but not a single ton of nuclear waste, not a single fuel assembly has made its way to Yucca Mountain. A lot of that is because of politics. Some of it arguably is because of technical issues. But we have no backup plan. And as of right now, there really isn't much momentum in the Congress to create a backup plan. And I'm working to change that. We either have to reopen Yucca Mountain, or we have to come up with another permanent repository. And we've got to do it fast. In the interim, an interim in the context of nuclear waste might be 100 years. We have to come up with somewhere to store the stuff until we figure out where that permanent repository is going to be. But Texas and other states, they have said very clearly, and I visited them as well, they're not interested in any interim storage until we work on a permanent repository. And who can blame them? Because otherwise they will become the permanent repository, and that's clearly not what they want. So we continue to push forward with the Navy. It's also Navy-owned land at San Onofre. They care very much about getting the waste off the coast there as well. I have introduced a spent fuel prioritization bill, and I thank Senator Bates and Assemblymember Berner Horvath for their support. What it would do, we have 120 nuclear waste sites across the United States. What it would do is it would say, prioritize the movement of the waste from those sites with the highest population density and the highest seismic risk. What makes our area around San Onofre so unique is that we have 8 million people within 50 miles, including all of us. We have 2 active earthquake faults, and we have rising sea levels. That makes San Onofre really unique and challenging. The second thing we've done, I mentioned permanent repository. We've got money for a permanent repository. That's a good thing. There's still $40 billion sitting in a fund that we all paid for. There's also money for decommissioning San Onofre itself. That was rate-based funds. What there's not any money for is that interim storage piece, nor for the transportation to get waste from a place like San Onofre to a place like Texas for an interim storage site. So we got $25 million in the House Appropriations bill for that. So we continue to move diligently towards a resolution. It is my great hope that we're going to get this waste off the coast as quickly and as safely as possible while we're all alive, and while we can still get away with not having a major earthquake or not having a major incident that jeopardizes our safety. The other thing I will say about safety is the canisters themselves that are being used to store the fuel assemblies at San Onofre have come under quite a bit of debate as well. One of them was nearly dropped in August of last year. And I have made it very clear to Southern California Edison, and I have great respect for the executives and my friends at Southern California Edison, that they've got to clean up their act. They've got to have more transparency and accountability with the community. We deserve to have the absolute safest possible storage to the extent that that waste is stored on our coast. They better do it in a transparent way. They better have things like real-time radio activity monitoring, real-time humidity monitoring, and they need to have, I believe, a full-time resident inspector on site. So it's sort of out of sight, out of mind, unless you're me and you drive back and forth every single day when I'm in the district and I see it and I live 10 minutes away from it, but it shouldn't be out of mind. We've all got to come together and solve this problem as a community because it threatens our quality of life if we fail to do so. So I'm committed to it. So there's a bunch of other stuff going on. I won't talk about some of that other crazy partisan stuff, but I do want to talk about, for just a moment, something that I think we can get done, and that's the cap on the state and local tax deduction. 43% of our district takes the state and local tax deduction. The average is $24,900. Everybody knows in the 2017 tax bill, it was capped at $10,000, right? If you're like my family, you really knew it because it definitely hit our family. I would assume it hit many of your families. So it particularly penalizes California. We are a donor state to the federal government. Everybody knows that, right? We give more to the feds than we get back. The basic bargain has always been you can fully deduct state and local taxes, which somewhat makes up for that. But now you can't. So I have a bill that we're going to be introducing. It's a bipartisan bill, very interesting. It's not a partisan thing, it's a geographic thing. Turns out if you're in a higher tax state, you very much want to see it repealed, the cap, and if you're in a lower tax state, you like things just as they are. You're fine sticking it to California, New York, New Jersey, and the rest. But we have a bipartisan bill that would fully repeal the state and local tax deduction cap back to where it was before the 2017 tax bill. That bill will have enough money to also restore the full deductibility for school supplies for teachers. And it will also provide more deductibility for our first responders. I think it's a great bill, and I'm hopeful that we can break through the noise and the clutter in Washington and actually try to get something done for the people that we represent. There's a lot of other things we're working on. Trade, anybody care about that? I certainly care about that. I very much, and I was telling our friends from the U.S. Chamber, I very much would love to see the USMCA brought before the House of Representatives as soon as possible. 1 out of every $4 between the U.S. and Mexico in our trade relationship directly impacts the greater San Diego region. This is a huge deal. What I want to see is a bill that's enforceable. I want to see something that protects our American workers, and I want to see something that does right by the environment that we all care about. And I also hope that working with my friends Juan Vargas, Scott Peters, and Susan Davis, and Duncan Hunter, that we can get the Tijuana River and the pollution from the Tijuana River language to help clean it up and to hold Mexico to account for their responsibility to work with us to clean it up. We came together as the San Diego delegation in a way that we haven't done in many, many years, is my understanding, around the Tijuana River, and we each introduced different legislation, complementary legislation, to try to deal with that issue. And you know, there was just another 8 million gallons of sewage that was dumped. And it does, if you ask the researchers at UCSD that have studied this, it does impact us in North County, San Diego, both in the water and in aerosol form. So the bill I am doing would increase funding for the Border Water Infrastructure Program, or BWIP program, quite substantially, and it would also require that the Environmental Protection Agency equitably distribute funds between Region 6 and Region 9, because we haven't been getting our fair share. Scott Peters and Juan Vargas have bills to increase the availability of funds under the North American Development Bank. Susan Davis has a bill that would improve or force the Navy to directly get involved in the improved quality of the water. Really critically important. When you have men and women who are getting sick, Navy SEALs and others, because of the quality of the water, we have got an obligation to clean that water up. And we've got to work with Mexico and hold them to account to do it. And I think that the USMCA is a way that we can do it. Another thing that I'd like to see us pass, in fact, 80%, 90% of those of us in the House would like to see passed, is a major infrastructure bill. We all have areas of the country that dramatically need federal support for infrastructure. And count me among those that will do everything possible. I know many of you here on the SANDAG board, I know many of you have different opinions about the future of transit and the future of transportation. What I've promised to all of you and to Hassan himself is when you figure out the path forward from SANDAG, I stand ready to support all of you to get as much federal funding as we possibly can, every dollar that we can, so that we can improve the commute times in North County. In my district, 54 minutes is the average commute time, round trip. That's an hour a day that people are away from their families, away from their wives, away from their husbands, away from their children. That's unacceptable. We've got to do everything we can to dramatically reduce that number. And it's going to take a whole lot of different things to do it. Like Tasha, I'm a huge fan of electric vehicles. I have a couple bills. One of them would put electric vehicle infrastructure in all our national parks and forests. Another one would get us to 100% over time, zero emission new car sales. The way we do it is first we get to 50%, and for those car companies that exceed it, they can sell credits to those that can't make it. That makes sense? So I happen to think that reducing our transportation emissions is critical towards combating the climate crisis. It's only one thing of several that we need to do, but it's really, really important. So I'm grateful to Tasha for that. I'm also working very closely with the Army Corps of Engineers. In fact, I was just with them yesterday, Kyle and I, to try to get them to take far more seriously all the proposals that we've had in the queue for decades. In Encinitas, in Solana Beach, in Oceanside, in San Clemente, and in Capistrano Beach, that have been sitting on the shelf. What I will say, I've had the opportunity also, and it was one of the hardest things that I've had to do as a member of Congress, as an elected official, is to welcome to my office the gentleman that had just lost his wife, his daughter, and his sister-in-law in a horrible tragedy that he was present to when it occurred, who has committed his life to try to prevent another tragedy from happening. And unfortunately, the Army Corps of Engineers for too long had not recognized just how critically important to our safety, to the safety of our community, these repairs and these projects are. They get it now. I know they get it now. Now we have to work with the new acting director of the Office of Management and Budget to make sure that he gets it now. But I think we can do it. I think the unfortunate thing is that with tragedy has come the realization that this isn't about tourism, it's not about recreation, it's about our basic safety. So I'm very grateful to work with you, Tasha, and work with everyone in the community on that. What I can tell you, I guess to sum everything up, is that it's been a crazy week. And, you know, I didn't go to Washington with the intent of any of this happening with the president. I went with the intent of serving this community and trying to do the best that I could for this community, whether it be on the environmental issues or the veterans issues or things like San Onofre. And that's what I intend to continue to do. I think that this is a very difficult time for our country, but what I know is that my friends across the aisle and I, we've got a whole lot in common and a whole lot of things that we want to work on together. And we can chew gum at the same time as we walk. If somebody gives me a piece of gum, I will walk around, and you'll see that I can do both. It's going to be a crazy year ahead. We're sort of in unprecedented times, and there's sort of a grudge match between the federal government and the state of California right now that I wish didn't exist. But just know this, I will stand up for this community with everything I have. I care very, very deeply that when we look back years from now, that we've given it everything we have to stand up for our values, to stand up for our cities, our communities, And that's, I think, ultimately why most of us in Congress, I hope why most of us, decide to run. Not for going on cable news and screaming at each other. If you want somebody who's going to go on cable news and scream at each other, I'm the wrong guy. But I'm going to dig my heels in. I'm going to work like crazy to try to get things done for this community. And I hope when I come back to this dinner in a year, we can talk about a lot more that we've done. So I'm grateful to the Vista Chamber, grateful to all my friends and elected officials here, whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, we're all Americans, we all care about this country. Let's do everything we can for this community. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Congressman Levin. A few months ago, I was at a gala and Congressman Levin was there, and I cornered him and said, the people of Vista want to hear from you. You are newly elected congressman and we want to hear from you. And I feel the same way about all of our other elected officials here this evening. And so I'd like to ask everyone to let them know that we wanted to hear from them and give them all a really big round of applause. Thank you so much. I really appreciate hearing from all of you. So with that, it's getting chilly. And we're done. That concludes our evening. Thank you so much. If I could ask our speakers to just stick around for a moment so we can take a photo, I would appreciate it. And with that, I thank you all for coming out tonight for Meet the Leaders, and I appreciate it. Have a great evening.
I feel like
Rachel wants you. It's not just me, if that counts for anything. I don't know. Let me find out. Great to see you. Thank you for joining All right.
there are no 5-minute
See you later.
Thank you very much for joining us this evening. It's very nice to meet you.
So many
Have a safe drive.
Why do we need to take your
I feel like
they have all the ones.
that's what I felt. I don't feel like I get this.
All right, I've had enough. Yeah. All right, we'll see you later. All right, take it. Yeah. That's good. My purse?
You got your purse?
Yeah. No, I don't.
I actually did get. Oh yes, it's good to see you. Hi, I'm Denise. Pleasure to meet you. Denise.
You got the big one.
Yeah,